What is going on, fantasy managers, and welcome to another deadline stream from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Ryan, aka FPL Inzaghi. It's great to have you along. It's great to see so many people in the chat already. For this deadline stream, I am joined by Jay, aka Pilot Flame 226. Jay, it's great to have you here. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's a bit of a nerve-wracking one. If you see me glancing off to the side, it's because I'm madly refreshing Twitter because I don't know what to do with Trent, and a lot of my plans revolve around that. So, yeah, I might be keeping one eye on it for the next like less than 20 minutes or so to see if there's any early team news. But yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, the Trent situation, I think, is dominating headlines right now. And so, people in the chat, if any news breaks about Trent either being on the bench or starting this game week, can you please let us know? Because I'm going to be focusing on this and making sure this doesn't blow up. You're going to be having one eye on this, one eye on Twitter. So, guys in the chat, help us out. If any news about Trent does break before the deadline, we've got about 19 minutes left, then please let us know, because what to do with Trent seems to be the big question on everyone's lips right now. Pilot Flame, what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight into your team. We're going to talk about your team for a little bit, and then we'll come to my team. And about 5 or so minutes before deadline, we're going to madly answer as many benching dilemmas and transfer questions and should I take a minus 16 questions as we
Yeah.
can. But let's just jump straight into your team here. So why don't you run us through your team on the screen? And yeah, let us know. Have you made your transfers, and what transfers are you thinking about making?
So I just have my team off to the side here, but I got Edward Mendy in goal. I have Rudiger, Robertson, Trent, Cancelo, Rafinha, Salah, Coutinho, and Kulusevski, and currently playing Watkins and Weghorst up front in a 4-4-2 with not the greatest of bench, but a potentially injured Ramsdale, Ait Nuri, Smith Rowe, and Dennis. So it's not looking good on the bench. So if Trent's fit, team's not too bad. Mind you, it's not got Kane and Saka, which isn't the greatest things, which I'm a little bit worried about. So the plan is if Trent's not available, he's going to go because he's going to be a cash cow to go to Kane or something like that. I was half tempted to go like Watkins to Kane and then Trent down to like an MRT, or if for some odd chance that Simicast were to play. That would be ideal if Simicast played at left back and Robertson played at right back. That was another thing I was contemplating, but he'll probably just play Joe Gomez and just be safe about it. To be honest, he won't do anything crazy, I don't think. Well, mind you, Klopp has done crazier things in the past, but that would be like absolute. That would be pristine if that was something that was possible, but I don't think it's very likely. Another option would be to go Coutinho up to Bruno and then drop Trent down to like a cheaper defender and play them. So like a Ben White would be like pretty much exact money for that. Just 1 million in the bank, one free transfer. Haven't made it yet, and I'm looking at the clock ever so quickly every time because I just going to be worried that one in a few minutes it's going to say seven, and that because it's 6:44 in the morning my time, and then I might miss it. So that's something I'm looking forward to. If Trent's fit, then probably something simple like Watkins down to Broya, and then maybe be half tempted to do Aitnuri up to Reece James and play Bland.
Mm,
But then I would have a benching dilemma of either Coutinho, Rafinha, or Watkins would probably, or not Watkins, Broya would have to go on the bench, which
yeah.
wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah, I completely understand the emotion. When you haven't made your transfers and deadline is approaching, you want to make sure that you get everything locked in, team news is flying around. But you did mention Trent. So you are thinking about selling him if we get news that he's not starting today. You've got your wild card left, right? So do you think for managers who don't have their wild card left, is it a different story for them whether they should sell or keep Trent?
Yeah, completely. I think because most FPL managers, I'm going to say most because not all will have Trent currently, but those who still have him probably have had him since basically the beginning of the season. So like my sell value on Trent right now is 7.9, but he's going to cost an extra zero point 0.5 or so to get back, which is somewhat difficult without a wild card because you're investing, you're basically a mid-price midfielder, a premium, or getting towards the premiums, midfielder in 8.5 million. to invest in him. And it's not easy to do that because you have much more limited transfers. If it was game week 4, game week 5, you have time to basically recuperate that back or shift things around. Towards the end of the season, you have to make these sorts of very, very tough decisions. And if you look at, Trent's fixtures, yes, he's got Watford at home, but Man City away, Man United at home typically wouldn't be as good of a fixture as what it was when they played at Old Trafford. And then you have to bring him back in 34 because he's got Everton at home, and Everton aren't great. Let's just call it plain there. And then Newcastle, you would think would be a very easy fixture. Then most likely a double happening in 36. Then Southampton and Wolves to end the season. So you're going to want him. You're going to be having in the back of your mind, if I'm getting rid of him now, he's coming back in 34 somehow. So you have to spend 2 transfers to do it. If you have the wild card, then it's probably easier. But for myself, I still have the bench boost as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. If I get rid of him, that's 0.5 extra I have to spend on him when I get the wild card, and making a bench boost team with, the ideal, 15 double game weekers. That is proving to be quite difficult because I've done some tinkering around with it, and I'm ending up with like Mateta on my bench and stuff like that, which isn't not like, yes, he's been doing well for Palace, but he could easily be swapped out with one of the 15 strikers that they seem to have. It is.
I think that is the challenge. If you are bench boosting, trying to find a forward to bench boost with in 36 is going to be the challenge. But we've got a super chat. I do take your point though, and I think it's a really valid one, that if you don't have your wild card, selling Trent is a real problem because you will want him back in. And how do you get him back in without a wild card? I sold him earlier in the season and I tried to get him back in without a wild card. It was really, really difficult. So if you're wondering about whether you should keep or sell Trent, for me, I think if you don't have a wild card, just keep Trent. Even if he's benched today, I would just keep Trent. But the super chat says he's got 2 free transfers, thinking either Coutinho to Mount or Reece James. Oh, sorry. Coutinho to Mount only, or Reece James and Mateta to fund James, or also bring in Mount for Coutinho for -4. Okay, so I'm trying to track that, but it looks as though he's considering Coutinho to Mount, and then Reece James in somehow, but he would need to fund that by bringing in Mateta as well. It's a confusing super chat. I want to do the best that we can to answer it, but what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with Chelsea, it's a bit of a very, very interesting situation that we won't know more until around the game week 33 mark. And the reason being is because they're still in the FA Cup, which you would think that they would go through versus Palace. And then they have a 2-legged affair versus Real Madrid. And typically in the away fixtures, and I believe Chelsea do play away first at Real Madrid. I'm just going to double check that. They play at home first. So in the away fixtures and the tougher fixtures, typically Tuchel goes for Azpilicueta at right wing back, just a bit more cover, a bit more solidity there. So would he play Reece James in the Brentford game where they're maybe not going to be as potent on the attack and he can get away with playing Reece James, and then play Azpilicueta versus Real Madrid, and then maybe play somebody else, maybe play a bit more solid, and go from there? I really like Reece James. I brought Reece James on my wild card back in game week 8. I had to double up with him and Chilwell, and they were basically magic the whole time until Chilwell got injured, and then Reece James got injured as well shortly after that. But for that time that I had them in there, like I'm a big fan of Reece James. I think he's a extremely valuable asset for Chelsea because he's one of the very few players that actually allows Lukaku to basically play in that Chelsea system, because he's the only way that Lukaku can basically get service for the most part, because he has the most reliable delivery. With Chilwell out the team, Alonso's been very hit or miss. On his day can be very good, but for the most part he's kind of just there for like the back post kind of threat, as it were. And Lukaku doesn't see much of the ball when Reece James isn't in the team, which is a problem for him because he wants to have the ball as much as possible in the central area. So I think Reece James starts today. I think Reece James is a fantastic pick, and I think that Mason Mount's a good pick. But if Chelsea were to progress versus Real Madrid and Crystal Palace, they would have a double game week in probably game week 37 because they can't have it in 34 and 35 because then they'll be playing their Champions League fixtures there, which would mean that in the game week of, I want to say it's like basically in 37 they would have a double where they would play on a Tuesday and a Thursday, which, I mean, good luck picking two Chelsea players that are going to do that apart from Edouard Mendy, and even then you might even
You might
expect
see
Kepa to
Kepa.
come in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they're through and they're in the Champions League final, and they're already like third's already sewn up for them in the league, just play Kepa,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm gonna have to.
And then they'll just say Mendy for.
Jay, I'm just gonna have to jump in. I
Go.
completely agree with what you're saying, but Colms reminded us in the chat that we've got less than 10 minutes until deadline, so we need to.
Yeah, I'm very.
We need to keep things rolling, keep things moving. But looking at your team, yeah, and I agree with what you've said about the super chat. I think a -4 for Reece James this game week, I think is perfectly fine. We'll have a look at my team now and we'll talk about my Reece James thoughts. Now, I haven't made my transfer yet. I've got one free transfer. I've got nothing in the bank. So for me, whether Trent starts or not is a massive decision or it's a massive kind of piece of information because if Trent is going to start, then I'm probably just going to roll. I'm just going to leave this team as it is. Broja versus Barnes is a bit of a decision for me, whether I should start Barnes or Broja. At the moment, I'm leaning towards starting Barnes. I've got Cody in defence. I don't love the Wolves' defence against Aston Villa at home, but rolling this week allows me to kind of start implementing my long-term strategy. I'm thinking about Bruno in for double game week 33, and having two free transfers kind of helps facilitate that. So this is the team as things stand. However, if Trent is going to be out, or if we hear nothing, because I'm assuming he is out, if we hear nothing, I'm going to take a -4, and it will be Kilman to Reece James and Lacazette to Weghorst, which is controversial. But I think at Lacazette's price, I just don't know if he's offering as much value as some of the other Arsenal assets. And dropping Lacazette down to a Weghorst will allow me to kind of move funds around. So what are your thoughts on that potential -4? Kilman to James and then Lacazette to Weghorst.
So you would have, who would be basically the fall guy in that scenario? So that would be my kind of query on that. So if you don't do that move, basically who would you be playing?
Yeah.
You'd be playing Lacazette, and you would hope that, I guess.
Yeah, if I didn't do that
move,
I would play Cody and Kilman.
Oh, that's not ideal, is it?
No.
And also, I mean, this game in particular for Arsenal versus Palace is not going to be an easy one. It's not going to be a walk in the park. There's also, Saka apparently came back a little bit, leggy from when he, was out due to illness, we'll call it. Yeah, for Arsenal assets, I think Martinelli, Saka.
I think we're getting some Trent news.
Those sorts of players are going to be better value, and Lacazette's going to be one of those.
I think we're getting some Trent news, Jay.
Oh, really?
I think we're getting some.
I see that there's.
So Spy on Cop, who's normally pretty reliable, is talking about Gomez playing right back. So obviously these are not confirmed. We don't want to come in here and start promoting these guys as being, gospel, but it looks as though Gomez will be starting at right back. Yeah, no Trent. According to this is all just speculation.
He's usually pretty reliable, and he also said that Salah's starting. So if you're wondering about that as well,
yeah.
Mind you, I don't think. Do
you think there'll be?
Also, I also see somebody else that's saying that Trent doesn't start and Gomez plays at right back as well. So, and he's usually fairly reliable in the team news as well. So
there we go.
I'm gonna have to get Trent out, I think, and I'm gonna have to do it quick.
Make those moves now. There was Yeah, do you think we'll have any other surprises from Klopp? I mean, Trent out and not starting is not really a surprise, but do you think we'll see any other surprises with the lineup? Do you think Tsimikas could play, for instance, or do you think that apart from Trent, the lineup will probably pick itself?
I think Robertson still plays. I think that they can, because I think they go away to Benfica, and usually in away ties. Klopp can be, I don't want to say more defensive because there's no such thing basically in Liverpool's, terminology book, as it were. but I think that Klopp could probably get away with playing Simicast there. I think, and just rest Robertson, knowing that they have City. If they go to Benfica and they get themselves a draw, they'll probably win. But let's say they get themselves a draw or something like that, or a very low loss. Although I think they can just beat them with their B team, basically. I think that he knows that in the back of his mind, the City game is the most important game. That is the most important game out of all of them. I'm going to do my transfers right now before the FPL site.
I've just done mine as well. I've just locked it in. Guys in the chat, we've only got 4 minutes left until deadline. So if you haven't locked in your transfers, go ahead and do so. We've got a few people. Mr. T is asking, should I bring in Robbo, Laporte or James? 2 free hits left. I mean, I think Robbo and James are the ones I'd prioritise over Laporte. I think I'd probably go James over Robbo. But there's really not too much to split between the two. We've got Cody to James from Ty in the chat. David's asking about making a goalkeeper transfer. It is hectic right now as people are trying to get their moves locked in, and hopefully FPL doesn't doesn't break down.
No, I got mine are in.
Okay.
Mine are in. So what I've done is, now that we know that, well, or at least it seems to be the case, that Trent is out. I've gone and brought in Ben White in replace of Trent, and I've used that cash to upgrade Coutinho and brought in Bruno Fernandes. So
What?
and he could easily be the captain next week. So yeah, why not? Let's go for it.
That's again, not what you said. That's not what you said 10 minutes ago.
No, but it is something that I realized I can do. So
wow.
that settles the captaincy for Gameweek 33. Pretty much. It also means that if I wanted to do something a bit interesting with Salah, maybe, because Salah only has Man United at home, although that is a very good fixture, there is a little part of me that might get rid of Salah for 1 week in Gameweek 33 as well. But I have to also worry about the fact that, Bruno's in, Ben White, so it doesn't leave me as flexible as what I know Dennis to come next week when he plays Leeds at home. So
yeah, I think
you can see my enthusiasm on that.
I think we're having some network connection issues. Let me just see what I can do here.
For those that are in the chat, you have about 30 seconds to make your transfers according to my clock on good old Windows here. Yeah, now people are making jokes that saying that imagine if Trent actually plays in central midfield instead of right back. That would be carnage, wouldn't it?
Absolute carnage.
That would not be. That wouldn't be great. But yeah, so I got maybe 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and that should be the deadline. I'm gonna refresh the site. I'm gonna see if I can take can I get a screenshot of my team before, just in case. But yeah, deadline seemingly has passed. I'm just gonna refresh the page and more. Nope, everyone still has a few extra seconds.
There you go. Can people in the chat just let me know that the connection's coming through? I was getting some notifications on my side saying that things weren't looking good, but hopefully we're back now.
Yeah, you seem better. You seem better now. Yeah.
Okay.
It was telling me on
yeah, I was thinking I was getting a bit of Andy FPL Teach Mode's internet. I don't know if you've seen his. Whenever
he makes jokes about it. Yeah, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, but we're going to go right through. So deadline has now passed. Happy deadline to you, Jay. We are going to go all the way through until the teams are revealed at 1:30. So stick around. We're going to keep talking FPL. We're going to keep talking about Premier League football as well. If you've got any questions, we don't need to talk about benching dilemmas or transfers now, but if you've got any questions for us in the chat, let us know, and stick with us all the way through, right until we see those team sheets actually drop and we see Trent not starting at right back, but he's starting up front.
Yeah, that's why I just wiped my eyes and just went like this. It was just like, oh, I have to sit here for less than 30 minutes only to see Trent's actually in the team or something like that. That would be just an absolute nightmare.
Well, I've started him. I've kept Trent in my starting team. The other option for me would be to play Cody instead. And look, if Trent comes off the bench and plays 15 minutes and whips in a cross and gets an assist, then I'll be
Oh, you're
laughing.
taking it. Oh, you're
Yeah,
laughing. Yeah,
yeah,
you're laughing.
yeah.
Yeah, because with Trent, he could easily come off the bench for 15 minutes, get an assist, and go up to like two bonus or something like that. It's possible.
Yeah.
If the game's like, like it's like a 1-1, it's a very scrappy game. It was like somebody unorthodox on Liverpool side that scored like a Fabinho or something. He struck one from way out. They've conceded. It's been a scrappy game, not very high pass percentage completion. Trent comes on, creates two big chances. One of them is a cross, goes in off like, I don't know, Milner's ankle or something like that. I don't know. And then he gets like a bonus or two, because we've seen times where, because Kevin De Bruyne is like that too. He creates a lot of chances as well. He could get no returns, and I've seen him get two bonus before. It's like, because they just create the chances to do so. So
Yeah, the chance
um,
creation. And that's similar for Cancelo as well. I was
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of saying on my stream earlier that when you're talking about Cancelo and Robbo and Reece James and comparing them all, I think Reece James, from an attacking point of view, is in a tier above Robbo and Cancelo. I just don't think that those two guys can match him for attacking returns, attacking outputs. But when it comes to clean sheets and bonus points and the chance creation, which kind of feeds into the bonus points calculations, Cancelo, I mean, he is an absolute monster in that regard, and
Yeah, he
and
is.
you can't disregard that when you're comparing those assets. I just want to quickly ask you on that. A lot of people were discussing Cancelo, Robbo, and James. Let's pretend that you have none of those guys. How do you
hmm
prioritize getting them in? Cancelo, Robbo, James. What's the priority order for you?
So it would depend on how Chelsea's looking for their Champions League fixture, right? If it looks like, if they get absolutely, hammered at home to Real Madrid, then it's not looking good, which means they have to play players in the league. Or if they get, upset in the FA Cup as well versus Palace, then Reece James goes down the pecking order. I would say, because I think that he is somebody who they're going to prioritize potentially to bring back slowly. And I think that could be an issue if the more competitions that they're in. Actually, I think I have the inverse of that. If they're in those competitions, it makes it more difficult. Basically, is what I should have said. I think Cancelo's by and far first, right? City keep the most clean sheets. They're odds on to win the league. They they have basically arguably the best team on paper twice, and Cancelo's a mainstay in that. Pep has shown more so this season than last season that he's willing to play pretty much the same team for the most part. He has his kind of starting 11, as it were, which is Cancelo typically playing at left back. He's on the corner of the 18, creating chances, bringing people into play. Their midfield's pretty much solid. You got Bernardo, De Bruyne, Rodri, and then it's just the front three that's kind of a bit up in the air. Grealish, who's come back in recently, had kind of a dip in form through the middle part of the season. Foden is kind of playing through the middle, and then it's just a matter of who's going to play out on that right hand side. Is it going to be Mars? I think Mars is probably their best player there, just because he holds the width and can just easily score out of nowhere. And I think Cancelo is what kind of amplifies that, what makes it even more potent than what it is. Because when you have a fullback coming in field with his qualities, that keeps the most clean sheets in the league, he would be number one for me.
Yeah,
Because he could easily keep a clean sheet versus Liverpool.
yeah.
Let's not get that twisted. Like, he can easily keep a clean sheet versus Liverpool. It could be Pep. If you told Pep Guardiola, "Hey, look, we'll give you a 0-0 versus Liverpool," he'll say, "Sure, I'll take it, because I'm winning the rest of my games." That's what I'm telling my players. Because if we win out and we draw versus Liverpool, we win the league, and that's what he cares about basically.
Yeah.
And even in the Champions League, I think, now this may be me overthinking things, but I think Pep Guardiola can rotate a little bit versus Atletico. Not
Y-
much, not as much as Liverpool versus Benfica. I think Atletico showed that they could be quite stubborn versus like United, but I think he can probably get away with maybe Zinchenko playing instead of Cancelo, or I mean, with Walker suspended for the first game, you would probably expect Walker to maybe come back in on the second game. it is a bit tricky because Cancelo's so important to how they play. Same with De Bruyne. Like those two, like take them out of City's team, they are much less potent
Yeah, for
without
sure.
those two
Yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to talk about rotation. Do you think there's any threat to Cancelo potentially being rotated versus Burnley this game week? I mean, the discussion in the lead up to the deadline was Kyle Walker, as you've just said, he's suspended for the first game of the Champions League.
Mm.
The assumption there is that Walker will therefore play in the Premier League. We've got Diaz who's out injured, so you'd imagine that'll be John Stones at right centre back. It's very likely to be Laporte at left centre back, and then there's speculation that it'll be Nathan Ake at left back because in the past, when faced with Burnley, a physical team who's traditionally quite a threat from set pieces, Pep has gone for centre backs in that full back position. So, do you think there's any chance that Cancelo's rotated against Burnley?
I think there's a chance, but with you saying that Ake is going to play at left back if anything, right? If he does play at left back, Zinchenko's not going to play at right back. Walker could play at right back, but Walker is not the type of fullback that's going to be utilized for his creativity, right? He's used for his recovery pace, he's used for his physicality. With that being said, that would be good against Burnley, but you then nullify your creativity, which is what you need versus Burnley. Burnley's going to sit in a 4-4-2. They're going to sit in a low block. They're going to lump the ball up to Jay Rodriguez,
Yeah,
Weghorst,
yeah,
hope it sticks, and then play it in behind City's defense. And what City are going to do is they're going to probe in Burnley's half the whole game. They get the early goal. It's probably curtains for Burnley. If you get 60, 70 minutes in and they haven't scored, City will start to take more risks. And those long balls will become more effective. And it could cause City a bit of problems. I think the likelihood is that Ake plays left back, Cancelo plays right back. I don't think Walker's in Pep's good books at the moment because he was not impressed with Walker getting that suspension. And I think it's a possibility that he could just be like, no, you're not even playing in the Premier League either. Just you're going to deal with that. If I need somebody more creative to come in at fullback, I'll put in Zinchenko
yeah, yeah,
because Walker he has a decent enough delivery, but it's not Cancelo. He likes left footers in the team too, which is why Ake is also very useful playing at left back because left foot is, you know, it keeps the balance as it were. He'll play Bernardo Silva somewhere in the team, whether he plays him out on the right in the front three or in the midfield three. He'll play Phil Foden almost certainly as well, and he'll use Grealish probably to hold the width because width is how you beat low blocks. You force the defenders to make decisions. The more space you have, the more intricate passing you can do, and that's what City wants to do. They want to spread you out, cut you open, get the early goal, and then force you to come onto them, which causes issues all over the shop. Because Burnley don't want to have to play from behind,
mm.
because we've seen what happens at the Etihad when that happens. One goal turns into five, and then it's not looking good for Burnley.
Yeah. Well, speaking about Burnley, obviously Weghorst has been quite a popular transfer in this game week. What are our expectations? What should our expectations be for Weghorst? Burnley right now, I think across the last 6 game weeks, are either the second or third worst attack, I should say, in the league. People jokingly say that with Weghorst, you just take your appearance points and run. And with
Mm.
5 games in the next 3 game weeks, that's 10 appearance points. That's not too bad. But what should our expectations be from Weghorst? Should it simply be appearance points, or do you think that there's a legitimate chance of an attacking return when you consider that he's got Everton at home, he's got Norwich at home in 32, and then he's got another double with West Ham and Southampton?
So with Weghorst, I think against the teams that they need to beat, so the Evertons, the Norwiches, the teams that are fighting relegation, we can have hopes that potentially he can get something, right? Those games are going to be scrappy. And typically in scrappy games, set pieces are something that could swing the tide. Turns out Burnley are very good at that. Weghorst is also very, very tall, which kind of plays into it. Burnley's team naturally is just tall, and that's what they play on, or they play for, really, right? And it always seems like around this time of the year, Burnley look like they might be in a bit of trouble, and then they nick a few 1-0 wins. Pope has a masterpiece. They get a get a ball off a set piece, Tarkowski or Ben Mee or something like that, put the ball in the net. they find ways, and I think Weghorst is going to be potentially involved in that. That being said, though, I think Ben Mee's out, which is a big problem for them, and defensively they might not be as solid. And I think Peters is only just coming back into like light training, so they do have some issues at the back. So keeping the ball out of the back of the net is probably more of an issue than them scoring, I think, because if you told Burnley, hey, look, you can just get some draws here and there, and then nick the 1-0s versus Norwich and Everton, things are looking okay, and they don't care where the goal comes from, right? That's the only other issue is that they don't necessarily focus into Weghorst, which is kind of a problem. He looks like a very good asset on paper. We don't even know if he's taking penalties because I don't think Burnley have had a penalty since he's basically been available from my recollection. But appearance points versus City, just hope he doesn't get booked, and then probably expect you're looking for something versus Everton. I would say that's kind of the my thinking about it. Wouldn't be surprised if literally he just ended up with all 10 appearance points, or maybe a booking or something like that. They may be able to somebody in the face because they're grafting, and that's what they need to do in order to stay out of the relegation zone.
Yeah, I think the point you make around the context of Burnley's season is a really interesting one, and it's an important one because Burnley are a team who need to win football matches to stay in the Premier League, and you can't win football matches unless you score goals, right? And so
Exactly.
there's it's come to a point in Burnley's season where they need to start winning matches. Sean Dyche has proven over the last few seasons that he knows how to get Burnley out of a tough situation. The fixture against Everton, I think that's the fixture that you're targeting. As you've said, the fixture against City, you hope for 2 appearance points. Yeah. You hope that he doesn't get booked, and you'll take that and run. And then they've got Norwich in 32. That's a great fixture. Another must-win fixture for Burnley if they want to avoid relegation. West Ham in 33. I think that's a game where West Ham are coming straight out of a Europa League match. So there's every
Yep.
chance that West Ham might be a little fatigued. Southampton, a team that, we're kind of thinking that they're on the beach a little bit. So it's really important to understand the context of each team's season when you're picking players. And yeah, look, I don't think that we're expecting Weghorst to score a brace, but we are expecting Burnley to try and score. And if they do score a goal, you'd have to imagine that Weghorst will be there or thereabouts. So yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying that it's the floor is the 10 appearance points, and I think for any forward at 6.4, if the floor is 10 points, you'd take that in this season with the absolute
Yeah.
dearth of forward options.
Yeah, it's like there's Kane and then there's just nothing
Yeah,
basically after that. There was high hopes from last season with the likes of Bamford and Calvert-Lewin, and they've just been injury stricken the whole season. So we haven't had that mid-price forward where we can rely on them. Even Broya to an extent hasn't been, the super value pick that we would want. There's been some rotation there even as well. Uh, Ivan Toney, looked to be this magical player that was going to come in and score a
yeah.
boatload of points. He's done recently, getting a few penalties for himself, which he's very good at. But yeah, just a note on Burnley. They currently sit 21 points. I just have the table off to the side here. They have 2 games in hand on Watford and the same number of games played as Everton, and they're 4 points behind. They beat Everton and they beat Norwich. They go 2 points clear of Everton having played one extra game, and one of those games would have been against Everton. So, and Sean Dyche is probably looking at that saying, we win those games, we're in a very, very, very good place. And I think that with Burnley, they've been in the relegation battle before. They've been there. Has Frank Lampard and Everton been there? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good point.
Frank Lampard likes to be closer to the top of the table where he can be a bit more adventurous. In terms of relegation scrap, it's a completely different mindset. It's literally at all costs, win the game. Doesn't matter how you do it. You end up with 9 men on the pitch. Half your team went off injured, but at the end of the game, you win 1-0. Sean Dyche doesn't care,
Yeah,
and most of the relegation managers, that's what they'll want to do. Like Watford versus Liverpool today, they will want to keep the game 0-0 as long as possible. And if you told Roy Hodgson, hey, look, you can be 70 minutes in and it's 0-0, He'll be like, "I'm game.
Yeah.
We just gotta keep it tight for 20 minutes. That's fine." You know, that's what they're going to be looking at. Whereas Frank Lampard, I think with Everton, they there's a bit of like kind of, I don't want to mess up this situation, and this game versus Burnley is very crucial for them, because if you think they lose that game, then you're looking at all sorts of all kinds of problems. They've had trouble scoring goals, and against a brilliant technician in goal save wise, like Nick Pope, who can just pull out a 14 pointer all of a sudden because he makes 15,000 saves. And Everton, not the most clinical team, at least, but not when they haven't had Calvert-Lewin. You can easily see Burnley having the absolute most torrid game, half their team's booked, and they win 1-0 because they get some set piece and Tarkowski
Yeah.
hits it off his forehead and it goes in the back of the net. Because let's face it, Everton aren't great on set pieces either.
No, that's right. And
That's another problem for them as well, is that they're not the greatest on set pieces,
yeah,
and Burnley are kind of pride themselves on it.
the scenario that you described was pretty much exactly what happened when they played Spurs a few game weeks back. But yeah, just quickly on the relegation battle, as a neutral, that game Everton versus Burnley is going to be fantastic to watch. I'm really interested to see that game. I'm not expecting lots of quality, but I'm expecting lots of drama. And the relegation battle every season is always quite interesting to watch. And we've kind of got, I think you could say that Leeds are still in that relegation battle at the moment. But you've got Everton, Watford, Burnley, and Norwich, who are kind of the main contenders. From my perspective, Norwich are down, Norwich are gone. So
Yeah,
we're
I would agree.
looking, yeah, we're looking at two positions to be relegated. I have a feeling that Watford's time is up, but Roy Hodgson as a manager, I trust his ability to get something out of them, and I think it's too early to say that they're down, but they certainly look like one of the favourites to go down at this stage. So from my perspective, I think that Norwich are down. I think that Watford will go down as well. I just, for all of Everton's woes, they've got quite a few matches to make up at home, and they are quite good at Goodison. So I think that the bottom three, I think it'll remain unchanged. I think Watford, Burnley, and Norwich go down. What are your thoughts on who gets relegated?
I think that it's going to be Everton that get dragged down into it. Now, I think Everton's one of like a few teams that basically have never been relegated ever.
Hmm.
They've always been in the top flight. But if you look at like Everton's games that are remaining, yes, they have some games in hand, but if you look at where they're going to get points again, right? That's what you mainly want to look at. So they have West Ham, which is away from home, not easy. Burnley, that's going to be a scrap. It's not going to be easy. Man United at home, I mean, Man United is good enough to beat anyone on, if they turn up. Uh, Crystal Palace, Palace isn't easy. Leicester could easily beat them because they've shown in spurts they could play well. Merseyside derby, I mean, Liverpool are going to look to probably embarrass them. If they can like secure them being relegated, that would be their dream, right? Their rivals to get relegated. And then at the end of the season, you're looking at Chelsea, Leicester away, and Arsenal in like the remaining like four, with just Brentford in there. Uh, that's not looking good.
Hmm.
Whereas I think that Watford maybe has some chances and Burnley have some chances. So if we look at Burnley's fixtures, Burnley have some winnable games. Everton, they'll back themselves to get at least a point out of that. Norwich, they're probably expecting to win. West Ham, they could easily stifle them because West Ham like to play on the break as well. Southampton at home, they'll probably back themselves maybe to get a point out of that. Wolves, Watford, Newcastle on the final day of the season. These aren't teams that typically score
Hmm.
boatloads of goals, and they'll back themselves to potentially get a point or see if they can nick something, if they can, have the defense looking like Burnley of old. Their only real difficult games to end the season is City, which is this game week, and Spurs away for the most part. Everything else is Sean Dyche should be looking and saying we can get points here, and that's not the same case for Everton in my opinion. Everton have some very very difficult games, and Watford's kind of in like a halfway house. They still have Chelsea, they still have City, they still have Liverpool today, but they still have Leeds, Brentford. They also play Burnley as well. Uh, they'll probably maybe back themselves for at home to Leicester, just because Leicester kind of up and down, and maybe they'll be fighting for Europe because that's looking towards the very end of the season. So if Leicester's more focused on winning the Conference League and getting themselves a Europa League spot, because that'll be the only way they can get a European place, they might be able to nick something there. So their fixtures are, they have some bad games, but they do have some winnable ones as well. Whereas at Everton, I just don't see them being able to grind out the wins. I just don't see Everton being that sort of team to be able to do that because the defense is not. It's just been all over the place, and defense is what's going to win you games,
Yeah, I think.
or it's going to at least get you points. If you can build on a platform of keeping a clean sheet, then you
Yeah.
have something to build on. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't see
it's
it with
interesting.
Everton.
I think listening to you describe the fixtures, it's quite clear in my mind that Burnley have the better fixtures to finish the season when compared to Everton. I put a poll in the chat, so if you are watching, get involved in the poll. And the simple question is, who gets relegated? Is it Everton, Burnley, or neither? Everton, Burnley, or neither? At the moment, 54% of people are saying Burnley are the ones who are going to get relegated because despite the better fixtures, I think there's still the 4 point gap that they need to make up. And, you know, they do need to start winning games. And recently we haven't seen much from Burnley. So, look, whoever goes down, I think it's going to be an entertaining finish to the season.
Yeah, I think it come down to the wire,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah. Um, we're getting some kind of team news filtering through. Nothing confirmed, but it looks like Robbo is safe. It looks like Robbo will be playing at left back. So
Yeah.
the Simicast dream is dead and buried.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's kind of keep talking about the remainder of the season from a Premier League point of view. Um, we've spoken about relegation. Let's quickly touch on the top four because at the moment I think you've got three teams: Arsenal, Spurs, and United, and I think it's probably in that order. Who's more likely to finish the top four? Arsenal in the box seat at the moment. They've played 28 games, which is one less than Tottenham and United, but they're on 54 points. So one less game, but they're 4 points in front of United and 3 points in front of Spurs. So, yeah, top four. Who do you think finishes fourth?
Pains me to say it as a United fan, as you probably would also agree, but I think it's Arsenal's to lose, right? You got 3 points ahead of Spurs. You still have the North London derby, which they'll probably back themselves to at least get a point out of that with how well Arsenal are playing. If we look at their fixtures, some very winnable games in there. They would expect themselves to beat Newcastle, Everton, and Leeds on the final three games of the season as it's scheduled currently. Palace, Brighton, Southampton. That's where I think it could potentially they could slip up. I think against the bigger teams, it's kind of a. It seems like Arsenal kind of just write those ones off. Not exactly write those ones off, but like it seems like every time they play Chelsea, or at least they play a bigger team this season, like a City, a Liverpool, Chelsea, they just kind of lose like 2-0 or something like that. It's not anything crazy like whereas like United lost 2-0 and could have been way more versus City, which was painful, and then getting absolutely embarrassed by Liverpool. They seem to be quite comfortable with that. I think it's the mid-table like type of teams that they could potentially slip up. They dropped points to Palace today. Spurs and United will be thinking, well, United's going to be thinking that they need to beat Leicester today. United needs to basically win out, and it's still not even in their hands. Spurs, you'll probably back them to beat Newcastle, although they have been playing well under Eddie Howe. But it's those three games. If Arsenal come out of those, win versus Palace, win versus Brighton, win versus Southampton, it's going to be very difficult for Arsenal to basically not make fourth. They have no European football. They have no other competitions to worry about. They're going to be fresh every game, and which is the same for Spurs and United. But they've been doing it for much longer, so their players are going to be fresher for the rest of the season. As long as they have no like crucial injuries to that core front four, so like the Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka, Lacazette front four, as it were, they should be fine. I think they should be should be well set up, and it's basically theirs to lose, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's probably if I had to put like put a bet on it or something like that, or just kind of make a guess, I would say the top four as it stands, or the European places for Europa League and stuff, is probably going to stay as is. I think Arsenal will be fourth, Spurs will be fifth, and United will be sixth.
Yeah, I think the fact that Arsenal haven't had European football this season has really helped them just manage the squad and manage their fitness levels and focus on the Premier League. Having the ability to focus all of your energy and resources on the Premier League and not have to think about, traveling away from home in Europe and kind of coordinating all of that, it must be a benefit for them. And I agree. I think that Arsenal are probably the favourites for that top four position. I've put another poll up in the chat just quickly with the relegation. It was a bit of a turnaround. Everton 43%, Burnley 40%. So most people think that Everton are the ones to get relegated out of that. Right now, Arsenal are way out in front in the top
For
four.
top four.
Yeah, but having a
Yeah.
quick look at some of Arsenal's results since early February, and they've just been able to manage games. Arsenal
Yeah.
with a 1-0 win over Wolves, 2-1 over Brentford, 2-1 over Wolves, 3-2 over Watford. The only game they've won by more than one goal was against Leicester. Every other game has been just by the one goal. So they're showing us a different side to their play. They're showing us a team, and we saw that at Villa Park. They're a team who can see out a match, whereas before I kind of thought Arsenal were this young, kind of naive team who could attack but could also concede quite a few goals. But they're kind of showing us there's a little bit kind of more to them, little bit more maturity, if you like, and I think that will help them finish in the top four. We're just going to go for a few more minutes, right up until we get the team news. It doesn't feel like we're going to get any more surprises from Klopp. Let's just talk about some predictions for the game. So Liverpool playing at home to Watford. It feels like a straightforward one. What are your thoughts on how this game is going to go?
I think it's gonna basically come down to, if Liverpool get the early goal. They get the early goal, Watford's plan goes out the window. I think they will do that. I predicted them to win 3-0. It just seems like a game where Watford are going to sit back. Liverpool are going to knock on the door for the first 30 minutes. They're probably going to get a goal somewhere in there. And then Watford have to come out of their shell. And then that's when Liverpool can hurt you. Because when you try to be expansive versus Liverpool, the press comes in, they nick the ball off you in your own half, you're unsettled, they break in behind. Salah, Mane, Jota, these sorts of players, they'll hurt you because they have the quality to do so. And, teams in the relegation battle, they don't want to be being pulled out of position. Their ideal day at the office is against the bigger team. They sit in their box and they head the ball away for 90 minutes pretty much, or clear the ball for 90 minutes. That's what they want to do. And that's going to come down to who can do that the best, really, in the relegation battle. Who can basically get the one goal where they can nick it, or who's going to basically defend the best in the relegation battle. Because if you get a clean sheet, you guarantee yourself at least a point, right? If you can't keep clean sheets, you can't guarantee anything. Because you can score, but if you don't keep a clean sheet, you're only getting a draw at most, right? If you just get the one goal. If you keep a clean sheet, you guarantee yourself at least a draw. Maybe you get something down the other end again on the set pieces and whatnot. Just touching back on Arsenal as well, I think it comes down to, so you said about the naivety, it's a bunch of younger players, but Arteta is under the mold of Pep Guardiola, and so last season as well as parts of this season as well, Pep has kind of locked it down. So like against United, they were up 2-0 cruising. They could have scored a bazillion more goals if they wanted to. They kind of just passed it around for 45 minutes. That type of control kind of comes from, I guess, Pep's psyche at least, and that's potentially what Arteta's he's finally being able to get out of Arsenal's squad. And I think it comes down to a couple of different factors. One is the two games that they have within each other. So the North London derby, and then Arsenal also play United as well, right? Those two games are obviously quite crucial. And then I think it also stems to the fact that when United play Chelsea, if Chelsea have beaten Real Madrid and gone through in the Champions League, and they've gotten to the FA Cup final, one of those games projected will have to be sandwiched in between like the FA Cup final and a game on Thursday for United. So you would expect Chelsea play the best team in the FA Cup final. They play a rotated-ish team versus United. They play like a normal-ish team versus on Thursday, and then they play the last game on the Sunday. Um,
Yeah.
do we have team news?
We do have team news. So we've got the Liverpool lineup, and yeah, it's an interesting one. So I'll just run it through very quickly. We've got Allison in goals, Gomez at right back. The centre back pairing of Matip and Van Dijk is what we expected. Robertson keeps his place at left back. Henderson, Jones, and Thiago, the midfield three. So Fabinho is on the bench. And then we've got Salah, Jota, and Firmino starting up front, which
Interesting. Okay.
which means that Mane is on the bench. So we've got a bench of Kelleher, Fabinho, Kanate, Milner, Mane, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Tsimikas, Diaz, and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, the first kind of thought that I have looking at that is I don't know if Gomez plays the 90 minutes. I don't know how much football he's played recently. If you're a Liverpool fan, let us know in the chat. How much football has Gomez played in the Cups and kind of in the other competitions recently? Because I haven't seen him in the Premier League. And yeah, I'm curious if he's a little undercooked. Does that increase the likelihood of a Trent cameo? And truthfully, I don't mind having a Trent cameo. I'm starting him in my team. My expectations for Cody are low anyway. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you think we could see Trent off the bench because of Gomez's limited minutes?
I think it's possible. I think if, you get to the 50, 60-minute mark and, Liverpool haven't broken the deadlock, I think it's almost an inevitability. I think what'll probably happen is with this shape, typically, what Klopp will do is he'll kind of tell Gomez, play a bit more reserved. Matip and Van Dijk will kind of sit on the halfway line. Gomez will do that, and they'll probably fan across in a back three. Hence why you don't see a Fabinho in there alongside Henderson. You see Thiago and Jones, which are a bit more adventurous midfielders. Firmino and Jota are going to try to pull players out of position. Salah's probably going to try to keep the width as well. Robertson will keep the width on the other side. And then you'll kind of have Firmino and Jota trying to see if they can displace the central defenders, because they're going to be ones that are going to be dropping into the spaces. They're going to be trying to, look for those kind of pockets in the half spaces around the 18 and try to allow for potentially underlaps, overlaps, and use that creativity there. If Watford are able to be quite stubborn, I mean, Sarr is back in the lineup as well, and it's very good for them on the break. That also could be an interesting dynamic where is Sarr, because usually he typically plays on the right-hand side. Another key note as well is that Dennis is actually on the bench as well, so a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit less space.
can you run through the Watford lineup as well?
Yeah, I can do. So it's Foster in goal, Loza, João Pedro, Kamara, Sissoko, Kiko Firmino, Samir, Sarr, Kabasele, Cucho, and Kuka, I think is how you pronounce it. Cucho, I don't. Okay. It's a defender basically. So by the looks of it, it looks like they're playing a front three with Sarr, Cucho, and João Pedro. So they've gone for just pace basically.
Yeah.
They want to. I think what Klopp is going to do is match up Gomez, Matip, and Van Dijk up against those three. That's a very dangerous game. A very dangerous game, because if Gomez, like you said, hasn't played much football, isn't exceptionally quick as a defender. He's not Van Dijk in any stretch of the imagination. Matip's also not the quickest, but has very good positional sense. They go 1v1 and Sarr's the one playing on the left-hand side. That could be an issue for the likes of Liverpool. You can potentially see a world where Liverpool get caught early-ish on in the game, maybe, just because of they think, oh, we're in control of the game first 20 minutes, and all of a sudden break in behind, Sarr's in behind, and it's a goal. And then now Liverpool are like, okay, now we have to actually turn up the gears a bit, which also plays into Watford's kind of strengths. They want to just keep hitting Liverpool on the break. That's how you basically beat Liverpool. They have most of the ball, and you want to hit them on the break because you know that they're going to match up their center backs 1v1 versus your players, because they back themselves to do so. And maybe Henderson will probably play just kind of the marshal, as it were, just kind of sit in front of those three defenders and just kind of let everyone else do what they need to do, and they have +1 in defense. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think it all comes down to how are Watford going into halftime. Are Watford set up at a 0-0 at halftime? Great. They could build on that. If Liverpool have already scored by halftime, I think it's pretty much written off basically at that point, because Liverpool would just kind of turn the screw a little bit. Watford will have to be a bit more adventurous because they need points, and ultimately goal difference probably doesn't really matter for the teams in relegation for the most part. They want to have the points on the board.
Yeah, there we go. Great analysis. Great to chat to you, Jay. All the best for Game Week 31. I'm quite envious of your backline when you've got Rudiger, you've got Robbo, Cancelo, you've got Bruno Fernandes in the team now in place of Coutinho. Guys in the chat, if you haven't gone over and followed Jay on Twitter, you can see his Twitter handle there. My Twitter handle is there as well. You're on YouTube. We're both on YouTube, so if you want to check out our individual YouTube channels, feel free to do so as well. We'd love to see you over there sometime. But thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your company. All the best for Game Week 31, and we'll see you in the next stream. Take care.